All right, what's going on, guys? I'm here. I'm going to recap week 7 real quick, and we're going to take a first look at this week 8 in the NFL, look at the slate. So week 7, basically, my cash lineup, I won barely over 50%, barely eked out a small profit, and I thought it was a tough week, right? So we had 10 games on the main slate, the least that we've had because of the London game. We're going to have that again this coming week, and we're going to take a look at it. We can click on this for the Millionaire Maker to see what this next week's going to look like. But again, only 10 games. We have some better offenses on this slate. We didn't have the Steelers or Packers. They were on bye this past week. The Monday night game tonight with Atlanta and the Giants. Last night with the Chiefs. The Chiefs are finally back on the main slate. They're finally back on the main slate, and we didn't have them this past week. So it was pretty tough. And I think that this week can be summed up as basically two things. One, whether you started Ezekiel Elliott and you try to jam him in, which I did, instead of going with maybe like an Adam Thielen. That could have hurt you in cash. And number two, all of those value wide receivers, none of them really hit for you. So we had like Marquise Goodwin didn't hit. I have notes right here on all of them, basically. You had Curse didn't hit. He played on 90% of the snaps. He didn't get a single point. Kiki got hurt early. He might have had a decent game. They were moving the ball decent enough. I mean, Watson didn't have a great game, but they were still moving the ball from the slot a lot. Josh Reynolds, he was probably one of the most hyped players at the beginning of the week. And then when Sherman went out, even more hyped. He had 51 snaps. He played the most snaps out of any wide receiver, 50 for both Cooks and Woods. And he only got one target, didn't do anything with it. You had Chester Rogers, who had 4 catches for like 40 yards. I started him in cash. Wasn't as bad as some of these other ones. You had Meredith, who was outsnapped 51-18 by Traquan Smith. You had Taylor Gabriel, who only had like 4 catches. Wasn't a big day for the wide receivers. It was more of a big day. Cohen had some yards for them in the air, but it was more of a big day for the tight end, Trey Burton, out there. And New England has a good defense, so you can kind of see that coming when you look back at it. Willie Snead, John Brown was the guy out there who kind of took over and did his thing. Snead caught a couple of balls. But it was just hard at that value spot for wide receiver where we've seen a lot of success this year, and that's really where it sunk. We saw Chubb was owned a lot. I owned Chubb in my cash game lineup. I ended up going with, I believe, C.J. Beathard as my cash game quarterback. That didn't pay out for me. So cash, I was picked up by starting John Brown. I was picked up by starting Gurley, fitting him in. And I was picked up by having at tight end. I had Njoku again. So I had some guys pick up at certain positions. But overall, just the wide receiver value was low this week. Starting somebody like Jermaine Kearse would get you 0 points, where he looked like a great smash play in the slot with both those receivers out. So I thought this week was pretty difficult in cash, and if you did score a lot, you were going to win a lot of your games. So if you scored probably around the 150 range, you probably won over 75% of your lineups, which usually isn't the case, but I thought this was a down week because of that small slate with not as much explosive players. You see somebody like Marlon Mack leading the way behind Gurley at the running back position. It's just tough to really get a read on that, especially when somebody like Zeke kind of just lays an egg for you. So we're going to look real quick right now at this next slate, and then I'm just going to do a first look lineup like I've been doing. I appreciate it if you can just hit this like button right now. Go ahead and smash it. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. This channel is kind of taking off, I guess. We're at about 110 subscribers. We've had 50 just in the past week, which is nuts. So I really appreciate it. I love putting out this content. It's just fun to kind of go through the process that I go through, let you guys see that, and then come back later in the week and see how the week changes. Because like I said, this is just a first look. This isn't no locked lineup. But I'll see what players I like early on and then kind of just dive into some analysis on it. So we have a lot of games in the 50-point range this week. I believe this game right here, Green Bay and Los Angeles, that's at the Rams, that's at 56.5. That's the highest total on the slate. Even higher than the Chiefs in Denver, which I believe is at 55.5. We have Pittsburgh around 50.5. We have Tampa Bay and Cincinnati, I believe, around like 53. And then the last game that's around the 50 range, I have it in my notes here, Indianapolis and Oakland, that's in the 50 range. So we're seeing a lot of 50 games, point range games on the main slate at least. So that's half of them, 5 out of 10. So we should see a lot more points this week. We have some better offenses out there. The Chiefs are finally back on the main slate. So let's see what we have here. Looking at the quarterback, Mahomes is finally back on the main slate. And he's priced up $7K on Draftkings. That's pretty expensive for a quarterback. He's $600 more than the next quarterback, which is Aaron Rodgers. Mahomes, he's just been performing, right? He's a guaranteed 20 points is probably his floor, and he can get you that 30-point range basically on average at this point. His average is 30 points. Yeah, 30.6. So he's definitely in play always, especially for cash, but at that price range, he might be a little too expensive. Rodgers, I love Rodgers. They opened as, 8.5 point underdogs, and 10 in some places I heard, and that's the most that they've ever opened as underdogs before in his career. So he's going to be playing. He's 10-point underdogs. They're going to have to be throwing the ball to get back into it. On the road against the Rams, who have been susceptible to some defense or to some offensives in these past few weeks. They kind of picked it back up this past week. They got right against the 49ers. They're coming back to home now. They've been on the road for a while, so they're coming back home. Rodgers, he does have weapons. Cobb and Allison, one of them should be back. I'm thinking Allison would come back first, progressing out of his concussion, limited in practice the week before. Have to monitor this. I do like Rodgers in this spot at 6,400, especially in the highest total game of the week for cash. So I don't like paying up often, but for somebody like Aaron Rodgers, where I think highest total game of the week, I think this is sort of a discount. I think maybe around 6,800 would probably be a little bit better for him. Trubisky just keeps rushing. I mean, best rushing quarterback outside of probably Cam Newton in the NFL right now. 81 yards. He's canceling out all of his turnovers that he's having with 2 interceptions here, and he gets in on the ground. So this is just a huge week for him. 36 again. He's been great at 6,100 against the Jets. He's coming back home right now. Maybe a little bit of a tougher matchup against the Jets. Their secondary is pretty susceptible, though, but maybe up front, if there's any pressure that gets on the Bears. They have an above-average offensive line, so I do like Trubisky this week, too. But for $300 difference, I think I'm still probably relying on Rodgers or moving more towards Rodgers. Luck keeps throwing the ball ridiculously. Only 23 this past week, and that's just because they got up big. Buffalo turned the ball over. They got in the end zone real quick. A couple of short touchdowns to T.Y. Hilton, and he was up quick. And he still came through at 22, 23 points for you at only 6,200. His price keeps floating in the same range, but he's going to be throwing the ball a lot going up against Oakland. It's a great matchup for him. Andy Dalton against Tampa. This is a nice play as well at 6,200. But again, these quarterbacks are all so close in price. Tampa's very susceptible. Baker had a decent day against them when it was all said and done. Andy Dalton last night against the Chiefs. I didn't get to watch most of the game, but just from the box score and his stats right here, it just didn't look great. 158 yards. I think A.J. Green had like 100 plus of those. So it doesn't look great. He's always somebody who kind of has a lower ceiling just because he doesn't have that rushing ability, and he's not going to go for 400 yards on any given night like somebody like Rodgers can do, like somebody like Luck can do. Golf price down against Green Bay, and this is because they're 10-point favorites. He's at 6K again. He's been floating around the 6K price a couple of times this year. They're 10-point favorites, though, so that shows you more so that maybe Gurley's going to be the guy to play in this one. They have to get up, though. It's 56.5 points. Their implied point total somewhere right around 30 points, so they're going to have to be throwing the ball somewhat, but there's always the fear that they get up at halftime and kind of like Matt Stafford against Green Bay a few weeks back. Then you kind of take the foot off. You're going to be running the ball more with Gurley. You don't throw it as much, especially around the red zone. Just killing the clock, basically. So there's some worry there, but seems like a lot of good quarterbacks right now. You have Russell Wilson, Cam Newton, Baker Mayfield, all in this high 5K range. Baker against Cleveland, that's not a terrible matchup for him, but in Cleveland, I'm going to stay away from it, or in Pittsburgh, I'm going to stay away from it, especially with Pitt coming off the bye this week. Cam Newton always produces. He had nothing going into the fourth quarter last night. He basically willed his team to win. He had over 200 yards, 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter alone. His team ended up winning 21-17. Just another great performance from Cam, and his rushing ability right here, 5 points on the ground for you, basically cancels out any turnovers he might have. When he doesn't have a turnover, it's a pretty good week for you. So 26 points out of Cam when he had nothing coming into the fourth quarter for you. He probably had, 5 points, if that, for you, 5-6 points. That's a pretty good week for him. Coming down to these cheaper ranges, don't want to touch Eli, although I like him tonight, Monday Night Football. I think this is a possible get-right spot for either him or the Falcons defense. Somebody's getting right tonight. It's like a perfect storm of having a bad defense, but also a bad quarterback. So who's going to win in that situation? I like the quarterback with his weapons. Maybe he finds one last thing on Monday Night Football, but we'll see. I'm going to plug Rodgers in here. And then we can maybe go down a little bit cheaper if we want to go somebody like Cam and see what we can build from there. I just love Rodgers coming off the bye here, maybe getting 1 or 2 of his receivers back healthy. Really has an arsenal of weapons on offense. Offense isn't the problem. If he's going to be down in this game by the point spread of 8.5 to 10, whatever you might see it as, then I like his chances throwing the ball. I like another 400-yard game possibly out of him. I don't see why he can't have 2 to 3 touchdowns, if not more. If this point total is 56.5, I even see it going over that, somewhere between the 35 to 33 type score. So I do like Rodgers this week. I'm just going to come down here to a cheap defense just so we can see what we could work with better. Coming down, Cleveland on the road, not too great about that. What road defenses do we have? Oakland at 2,200 against the Colts. Luck's throwing the ball a lot, more susceptible to turnovers. He still is not a turnover machine, but he does throw his interceptions. That could be an option, but Oakland's defense is just putrid. Their fantasy production is terrible. Outside of one game, it's just absolutely terrible. Who's playing the Bills this week? That's probably going to be priced up. Playing ball, or the Bills not on the main slate. They're on Monday Night Football, I think. That's awful. But yeah, okay. So we got let's just plug in one of these. 49ers at Arizona, we'll take that, whatever. So Josh Rosen, whoever's going to be starting for them, we'll take that just to put something in there. And then what I want to do is I want to come right to running back, and I want to play my studs. So we have Saquon finally coming home against Washington. We just saw Zeke. Road matchups for running backs the first time aren't awful. The second time they get a lot worse. We have Saquon, though. He's at home. He's a different type of running back. He catches the ball. Probably more production catching the ball this year than actually running the ball. More of a receiver out of the backfield for that team. I do like Saquon. He is priced up at 8,800. We have Gurley priced all the way up to 9,800. Gurley at the highest point total of the week. His price doesn't move. He just keeps producing. Maybe he didn't get as much yardage this past week, but he still just keeps landing 30 points for you. I want to play Gurley. I want to play Barkley. I don't know if we're going to be able to do it. I don't know what Bell's doing coming back from the bye. I don't know if there's any news on him. Didn't report to them on Monday. All right, so that was last week. No, that was this week. So team finisher week 8 without him. All right, so maybe Connor's in the mix here against Cleveland. That's definitely something. Mixon in a get-right spot against Tampa Bay. This is very interesting to me. Who's playing Atlanta? Are they on the main slate or are they not? Or are they on bye this week? Okay. So, Mixon in a get-right spot. His whole team, they got down big. You can't blame him. He still got 15, whatever it was, touches last night. Still producing pretty well, around 4 yards a carry. And his team was just down big, so that's what you have to factor in there. I'm going to plug Mixon into this cash game lineup for now just because I love the matchup against Tampa Bay, and I love that they're coming home, coming off of a huge, embarrassing loss. I actually like this just from a betting perspective as well. I like Cincinnati here. It's a high game, a high point total again, the third highest on the slate. Kareem Hunt's also very interesting. Coming home, he's been playing absolutely great, getting some work now in the passing game. You can see these last 2 weeks here. Exactly what you want to see, handling the bulk of the carries. 3 touchdowns this past week, seeing targets, like I said, in the passing game. And his price he's priced up $1,000, so they're accounting for that again. You're going to see price ups on all these Chiefs players now that they're back on the main slate. You have Patty Mahomes, the most expensive quarterback. I guarantee Kelsey's the most expensive tight end. Yep, by a lot. That's crazy. By $1,300, he's the most expensive tight end, but it's deserved. There's a lot of good running backs this week, guys. You have Mixon, you have Barkley, you have Gurley. There's a lot of great running backs. You don't even have to pay all the way up to Gurley. I mean, I know he's in the highest point total of the week. He's going up against a decent Packers front. I don't see why he's not a must start. I'm going to plug him in here just in case, but I don't think you have to play him when you have guys like Kareem Hunt at 7K. You have guys like Joe Mixon at 7,300. If you're going to play Aaron Rodgers, we most likely can't play these guys right here. I most likely can't play Gurley. I'll take him out for now just because I'm realizing the salary was $4,800 to spend. I mean, you have David Johnson. You're going to have a new coordinator there. Just got fired. He's priced up, or he's priced down significantly. He's priced up just for that Thursday night slate, but basically he's priced up besides that from that $5,900 price. Most expensive we've really seen him at since the beginning of the year. And he's at home against San Fran. This is a great matchup for him. San Fran definitely gives up yards on the ground. Gurley had a decent day on just limited touches yesterday. Definitely got in the end zone a good amount of times. David Johnson at home with a new coordinator. Maybe they finally get him involved a little bit more. I'm going to plug David Johnson in here at 6,700. Like I said, at running back, these are all great opportunities. I mean, if you even come down here, you can find Nick Chubb against Pittsburgh on the road. I don't love rookie running backs on the road. Not at all. So I'm going to stay away from that, especially in Pittsburgh. But Chubb, he's back. I mean, I'm going to talk about Kerryon Johnson because he did great. He's at home against Seattle this week, which actually is a pretty decent matchup for him. Seattle's not the same defense they used to be. He's only at 5,300. I think he's probably priced down if he's going to be getting these 20 touches a game. He got some work in the passing game, which is nice. But we have to see if Theo Riddick's back. If Theo Riddick's back, I still like Kerryon Johnson for the year, but maybe not this week in Seattle, especially on passing downs. Let's see if we have any more value. AP just keeps producing. He had a decent game yesterday. Back-to-back games, he just misses a 100-yard bonus. But the thing is, he's not getting work in the passing game, so he's really reliant on that 100-yard bonus, multiple touchdowns, to give you a really good week. Tournament-wise, he's a safe play, though, if you want to go cash at a cheaper price, $4,800. Gio Bernard, I believe, still going to be out. That could change things if us playing Mixon, so we're going to monitor that. But I believe he should be out at least another week. Definitely playing Mixon in this get-right spot. He should be getting some more work in the backfield around the goal line. Hopefully converting some more of these passes for some more yards there. So I like Mixon. I like David Johnson. I do like Kareem Hunt, and I do like Saquon and Gurley. Of course, like how can you like them? I'm probably overlooking Connor this week. He's been fantastic. We'll come back there. Running back is loaded this week. Tariq Cohen, he's been producing. I don't know if I don't like that touches for cash, though. But in the passing game, he's been producing extraordinarily well. Marlon Mack came back, and he did great. Like I said, tons of running backs this week. So let's just move into wide receiver, going with some of the cheaper options, which I don't do. I usually pay up at running back, but I kind of want to pay up for Rodgers this week, just in that huge matchup. So we'll see who we can kind of pair him with. I do want to pair him with Davante Adams if possible, but Marcus Peters, I think Davante Adams is just like DeAndre Hopkins, just kind of like Julio Jones. They're just matchup proof at this point. Adams is just produced. He's a top 5 wide receiver this year. If you hate that, you can put it in the comments and tell me why he's not. But his numbers this year, he's the best red zone wide receiver in the league. And that's because he's paired with Aaron Rodgers and he gets the targets, but he converts those targets. I think he's the best red zone target in the entire league. I think Gurley's the best red zone weapon because he can run the ball as well. But if we're going target-wise, used to be Gronk. He's not here anymore. I think it's Davante Adams. So let's see. Davante Adams at 7,900 isn't extraordinarily expensive, especially since he's been producing this entire year. His floor is 15 points, around that range. Probably going to see his 10 targets. But I do want to go a little bit cheaper for the Packers just because we really have to at this point. Tyreek Hill, wow, most expensive wide receiver by 100. I mean, I don't hate it because he's been producing, but I don't love it either. I'm not probably going to pay up for him. In tournaments, I'll definitely go there. But as far as cash goes, Odell against Washington at home, that's not terrible. He's going to have his rematch with Norman. AJ Green at 8,000 against Tampa. This is very interesting here. We know he's been producing. He's been getting the targets like he always does. I just don't think we can afford him, but maybe we can come back to him. Let's go at tight end, see if we can plug somebody in pretty cheap. Jimmy Graham paired up against the Packers. I don't hate this at all, and he's been producing. He's been getting the targets. Now, that's because Cobb and Allison have been out, but I think Jimmy Graham's building a little bit of a rapport with Rodgers here. I'm going to plug Jimmy Graham in there, and then take a quick look at the rest of the tight ends. Kelsey's the most expensively priced. I don't want to pay up for that this week. I think it's definitely well-deserved. I just don't want to pay up for that this week, especially since tight end week in and week out is very volatile. Now, I know Kelsey's going to be consistent, but paying up for almost $7K for a tight end, I know last week Ertz came through for us if you did play him. But for a guy who might get you the 100 yards, sure, but is that worth it if you have to go down on your running backs and receivers? It could be, but I don't want to do it in cash. I think it's a little too risky. And Njoku's still not getting priced up enough. Only $400 up, and he's still getting, he had small targets, he just converted them better, got in the end zone here. Pittsburgh, going on the road against Pittsburgh. Kind of like that over Graham, now that we actually take a little bit of a more look at this. Burton's been producing, don't want to play him against the Jets, though. Reed just been falling apart. They just don't look his way that much. It's just pretty sad. I saw him catch a long one yesterday. I think he had 27 yards. And then they just don't go back to him. It's just ridiculous. Olsen's pretty cheap here. Home against Baltimore. Tough matchup, but he's home. He's still going to be getting targets. He had a quick or small score last week. I think there's value at tight end as well. I think Njoku's probably a safe play again against Pittsburgh, who's been susceptible. They've been getting shredded apart by tight ends all year long, but I think their defense is coming into form. On the road, Baker Mayfield in Pittsburgh, I think he can hold himself there. But I kind of want to stay with Jimmy Graham right now and then see where we can go from there, just to get that Rodgers stack. Let's see what this guy's looking like this week. Randall Cobb. Now, Randall Cobb, I haven't even looked at the receivers yet, but he's just somebody that is very consistent, especially in high-scoring games when the Packers play in high-total games, which is a lot of their games, especially if they're playing somebody like the Rams. I do like Randall Cobb if he can come back and be healthy this week. There's going to be a lot of competition back there between Graham, between now MVS, between even Ernst or Equinius, but can't even say his name, Brown, the kid out of Notre Dame. And then you also have, if Allison comes back, then obviously Adams is going to be seeing the most targets out there, or you would think projected the most targets out there. But I like Cobb at this price if he plays. We'll plug him in there quick just to see what it looks like. And now let's take a deeper look at wide receiver. Brown, yes, of course, against Cleveland. Love that. But we have the rookie out there who's been looking pretty good. AJ Green, like I said, I love that. That's probably something I'm going to come back to if we can get some value at wide receiver this week and maybe actually pays off. Boyd, I don't hate either. I mean, he didn't really do anything last night, but neither did their whole offense. I don't hate Boyd this week. Cooks, we have to look Cooks and Woods here. So we're going to have to watch at what happens with Cooper Kupp this week. If Cooper Kupp's going to be out again, and there's probably a decent chance, I think we play Robert Woods. He did great in the slot in a game where they were blowing people out. Still got 7 targets, 78 yards. And they're supposed to blow out the Packers as it seems right now. But with that high total, I do like Woods in the slot. Definitely do. I want to have more pieces in that game, the higher total games of the week. That's why maybe San Fran, Arizona with David Johnson for cash is a little sketchy because that's not a high total game. We can come off that, maybe go more towards the Kareem Hunt route if we want to pay up a little bit more. Or go all the way up to Saquon or Gurley, we could see. Sanders, you can never hate Sanders. He's just constantly producing, constantly getting targets out there. But we got to see what the quarterback situation is going to be. Keenum's probably still going to start. We have to watch his health too, Sanders. Kenny Golladay, I love him. Definitely priced down a little bit. He has a tough matchup against Seattle, but really that's not that tough of a matchup. I think that 8th place is actually just a little deceiving. Only 2 targets this past week. I played him in a couple of tournament lineups. He had a touchdown that was called back, so the stat sheet's a little bit different. If that actually goes in, he has a decent week then. John Brown keeps producing, keeps catching all of his targets. This past week he did that. Yeah, he's just been solid cash. I don't know if I want to play him this week in cash, though. Golden Tate's waiting to explode. I mean, he's been calm now for 2 weeks. You just have to know Golden Tate eruption week's going to come. You can see it happens every so often. That's just how Golden Tate is. He's a very sporadic player. Where do we find value down here? MVS at 4,600. If Cobb doesn't play, I think he's a great play as well. Anybody in that game, really. Rodgers priced down to 4,200. Like I said, a lot of people played him this week, and he just didn't get the targets like he did in the past week. It was tough. I mean, he converted them early. He had like 3 catches in the first quarter, first half at least, and then just nothing after that. Quincy priced all the way down to 4,000. Don't know what he's going to be like injury-wise, but that's pretty cheap. Cortland Sutton. We have Cortland Sutton here. He caught a touchdown. I think he's going to be great, but not yet. I think there's going to be... They were trying to shop Demaryius Thomas. Maybe if they could actually shop him, we'll see some cut Sutton coming in there and doing well. Might win you a tournament this year. Priced all the way down here. Do we find anything? Adam Humphries has been playing great. Still getting targets from Jameis Winston. Great based on his prices, right? In the $35,000 to $30,000 range. Anthony Miller for Chicago finally got some more targets, but like I said, the wide receivers didn't do much out there this past week. All right, let's just find some lineups here. We have $5,800 to spend, and we would like to get, ideally, a running back in this flex spot. So let's go back to running back and just put a running back in this flex spot. I didn't touch on McCaffrey. At home against Baltimore, I don't hate it because they'll be dumping it off to him. He just had a rough time finding any ground. Had some tough matchups against Washington and Philadelphia. That's why I kind of want to stay away from Barkley. I know he's a better pass catcher, but just because of that ground and pound, I think Washington's actually very good on the ground. They held Zeke this week down. Really want to play Gurley, but it's just not going to be in the cards. $3,800 a piece. Maybe if value opens up later in the week, we could do it. Or if we can come back at running back, come down here at running back, and if you go with somebody like Kerryon Johnson, you get a little more value. So that's actually interesting to look at that. So let's see now at 4,500 if there's any value down in here. There's definitely value here. Chris Godwin, not terrible. Seeing consistent targets out there. Snaps are increasing steadily. Sammy Watkins in a high total game. Still getting consistent snaps at 4,600. That's definitely interesting to me. Definitely something I'm going to look at. Jermaine Kearse, I mean, we can go right back to the well if Anun was out. Kearse only had 2 targets, didn't produce, but that's more on his quarterback. Just a rough day for Sam Darnold. I think threw 3 more picks. Kearse price comes up to just 2 points more. Only had 2 targets, so that's a little concerning. We see sort of this similar player pool down here with the Snead, with the Rodgers, with the Anderson, and Anunwa. Ratley caught some of his targets, didn't get as many targets as we would have liked. I don't think he was on the field as much. We saw a lot more Perriman out there, I think. Rashad Perriman played a lot more snaps than I was thinking he would. Jordy Nelson at home against Indy. This isn't terrible either. I think I'm going to go and I'm going to plug Sammy Watkins in here. Sammy's getting consistent targets. He's catching the ball. He's probably due for a touchdown. You can't really predict touchdown variance, but he's due for something, right? So I like Sammy Watkins there. I like Cobb if Cobb plays, right? So I like Cobb if Cobb plays. I like stacking here. Ideally, I want to run it back with somebody on the Rams. That's why we have Gurley here. If we can't afford Gurley, we can come. And there's a lot of if-then statements this week, right? We can come here and we can go at flex now with the running back and go Connor. You can come up a little bit. I don't know if we can get anything there. I don't really want to come up off of maybe Mack. I mean, we saw Marlon Mack played great this past week. He got the work. A lot more work. He kind of just took over that lead role against Oakland. Kind of overlooked him. Don't mind him, though, if he's going to get that work. In a high total game, 50-point game, you have Kareem Hunt. Then this scares me because I'm not playing Gurley. I'm not playing Saquon. I don't think Saquon's going to have an awful game because of his pass-catching abilities. But for that price, I don't want to pay it. And Gurley's just very expensive this week. As the week goes on, more value is going to open up, right? We're going to know if Cobb's playing or not. We're going to know where the 3K or the 4K, low 4K, high 3K, mid 3K wide receivers of value are that we could slide in and maybe fit somebody like a Gurley in this lineup. Maybe I come down at quarterback and I find some value at quarterback because I didn't really look too closely into that as much at really low range. Case Keenum against KC. This is probably going to be a popular pick at 5,100 to save some money. I don't hate that either. I just don't like Case Keenum too much. If Emmanuel Sanders plays and he has his weapons there, could be a sneaky play in a high total game, the second highest of the slate for KC At home, though, on the road, Case Keenum, I don't know if I love that. But it's an opportunity for Case Keenum to go for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, definitely, against KC, who's very susceptible. But last night we saw them kind of get right at home against Cincinnati. Is that what there's going to be a trend there? Is that just an outlier? I don't know. That's something that we could look at later on in the week, possibly. Looking just a little more into this, there's not really anybody else down here that I like. Coming off of C.J. Beathard, playing him last week, definitely a mistake in cash. Only got me 9 points. Didn't have any of the rushing ground. Didn't get in the end zone. I do like Matt Stafford week in and week out. I think he's a solid player, but I think he relies a lot on that 300-yard bonus. And now with Kerryon Johnson out there, maybe they take a little weight off of him for one, since they haven't had a runner like him in a while. So yeah, Case Keenum's definitely a value play. I want to stick with, I think there's a lot of quarterback great plays. Running backs is just loaded this week at the top. We see all the running backs back on the main slate, besides probably just Zeke and Melvin Gordon are the only ones not out there, but everybody else now. And we see a lot of value coming from Tariq Cohen, Kerryon Johnson, those types of players, Nick Chubb. And like I said, Nick Chubb's cheap. If you want to play him against Pittsburgh, be my guest. Just running backs on the road as underdogs. I don't know if I want to play with that right now in cash. So this is definitely a first look lineup we could look at here, and I can come down at defense probably by $100 or $200 if we want to get up to another running back. But this is something that I'm going to look at, and there's a lot of if-then statements in this lineup, right? I want to play Rodgers. I do like that at 6,400. Pairing him with some of his receivers and tight ends is smart, and then running it back with a player on the other team, Robert Woods, is smart. But there's a couple of things here. Is Cooper Kupp out? If Cooper Kupp's out, I think Woods is a great play again for cash. Is Randall Cobb playing? If Randall Cobb's playing, I love this here. That's probably going to take a little bit away from Graham, but I like Graham's production, and I just like Cobb's going to be inserted immediately back into the starting lineup. Don't think his snaps will be limited if he's healthy. So I like Cobb there. I mean, we could look at what Allison's price is, probably a little bit cheaper. Geronimo Allison, actually $100 more on the outside. I like the slot game a little bit more against the Rams. I don't want to see any Marcus Peters possibly being on Allison. I think Adams is matchup proof, but I don't want to pay up for Adams here if I want to get some decent running backs and play Rodgers. So I'm fine with Graham. Maybe come off for Njoku, save $100, but I think either of them are a safe option, especially in these high total games. Sammy Watkins is kind of like that guy who I'm just trying to find value down there. And on the Chiefs in the second highest total of the game, maybe a little bit of a tougher matchup, but I don't think it's too tough, especially we see Patty Mahomes just tearing apart all these tough matchups. Marlon Mack, probably the one guy who I'm a little uncertain for cash, but we saw it. He came right back in the preseason. They were saying 1,500 yards this guy's going to get this year. They gave him 20-plus touches yesterday, and he got in the end zone. He averaged over 7 yards per carry, and he played really well on his touches. I mean, he had, behind Gurley, he's had, in his past 2 weeks, the past 2 weeks, he's only behind Gurley for like first down runs, for first and 10s, for 5-plus yard runs, and just for average yards. He's averaging 7 yards a carry, which is absolutely incredible in the last 2 weeks. So I'm fine with Marlon Mack. I'm fine with Mixon in this high total against Tampa at home in a get-right spot. Fine with Kareem Hunt, who's actually coming alive in the passing game now. I like these running back stacks, actually. I think this is going to be a tricky week in tournaments to try and get all the running backs you want. I like Rodgers with Cobb. If Cobb's not out and Allison's in, just throw Allison in this type of lineup, which is something that I would do. One last thing I want to look at is Sammy Watkins at 4,600. I do like him there, but if we have some extra money, is there somewhere else we want to go? The only place I would look at is maybe Crabtree, just because he's getting more consistent targets than Watkins. So Crabtree's possibly an option there. The other thing is if Cobb and Allison don't play again, which I don't foresee happening, MVS steps right in for me there, and then you get some more savings off of Cobb, maybe $600. You can go up at that wide receiver spot, get into this range here. Maybe you play Funchess. I'm going to stick with Sammy Watkins this week. I like his value down there. At defenses, there's somebody better now with an extra $300 we can go up and find. Ravens on the road. Kansas City at home, don't like that. Rams, I don't like that. Bengals against Tampa, not totally against that. Don't really like what I saw this past week. Carolina against Baltimore, not totally against that. So maybe not anything really here. I'll just plug this in for now. So this is my first look lineup. Like I said, it's not my end lineup. I do like, and I see a lot of value at running back this week. It's going to be tricky building final lineups, but I do like these running backs. Maybe later in the week we find some wide receiver value. We get Gurley in this lineup in that high total game, but I do like running it back with Robert Woods. This is my first look lineup for week 8. I appreciate it, guys. If you can hit that like button, if you're still watching, hit that subscribe button. Comment down below what you think of this lineup. Who did I miss? What value plays did I miss based on maybe injuries? There's a lot of injuries this past week. Did I miss somebody in that area? Do you want to see other types of videos? Let me know. Do you like the value videos I put out later in the week? The Thursday night videos. What do you guys want to see? I appreciate it. I'm getting more into NBA, like I've been saying. Sorry about that. My camera literally just died. But for right now, my name's Sal. I appreciate it, guys. Be good. Be safe. Peace.